Welcome to the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast. We are so glad to have you with us today. And with me again is Nikki Connor from
Yeah.
Package to Profit. And this is our sixth in our sixth series. And we're going to be talking about legacy today. So, Nikki, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about moving from insurance producer to visionary leader. And what we really want to get into is how do you build an agency that lasts, moving beyond yourself. And so, Nikki, over the last few weeks, we have been talking about sales, we've talked about scaling, we've talked about tech, about culture, and now let's talk legacy. What does it really mean to architect an insurance agency versus just operating one?
Yeah. So when it comes to architecting an agency, it just really just means about being intentional with your design. Um, Operators, they keep the lights on, right? Architectures or architects, they really build a business with the end in mind, one that creates opportunity, one that builds wealth, and most importantly, is it outlives them and their name.
Good. And now here's an interesting question as well. At what point in the agency owner's journey should they really start thinking about legacy? Should they wait till they're, in their mid 50s or, is that something they should actually be thinking about long before, that quote unquote retirement planning, phase of their life? Now, what does that look like for them?
Yeah, so essentially what that looks like is them basically starting with the end in mind, right? So I would say begin with the end in mind. So from the time that you enter into this space, what do you want it to look like, right? Where do you want to be sitting, in your retirement years? And I like to start this out from the beginning, right? But most of my agents, they're not beginners, right? They've been in this game for a while. But when you start with yourself, it makes it so much easier to transpire that into your team and for your team to communicate that to your clients. Because when you are working with your clients, you want them to think of you as a legacy brand, right? And you want them to work with you as a legacy brand. So when you start with yourself, it makes it so much easier. And the best way of oh, go ahead, sorry. I
Nope,
won't go
you're
into the next part.
no, you're good. But I like, the thought process here. And the reason I wanted to ask that question that way, I think sometimes we don't start with the end in mind.
Mhm.
We think we have to get to a certain place and then we start thinking legacy. And I really think it's important that we always start with the end in mind, no matter where we're at on the, I'm going to call it the actual age scale. So with that being said, now, we talk about building with intention. And in a day-to-day decision-making process, what does that really look like for an agency owner that wants to build a sustainable business, not just a profitable business?
Yeah. So it really means making decisions with the next decade, not just the next quarter, but the next decade. And it'd be nice for those to start now. But so many agents are in so thick in the neck of the woods to where they can't think past the next day. So I do focus on 90 days, like I said. But let's say you're listening to this and you have all your ducks in a row, everything is running smoothly, you're growing, you're scaling, and you just want to start now. It means you thinking about the team members who align with your mission and identifying those who simply don't, right? And figure out what the solution will be for them. Or maybe just the role that they're in, right? May not align with where the boat is going. So assessing that. And then also investing in systems now that save time later, right? So when you're thinking about the next decade, And that's why it helps to have somebody that has the time and capacity to do this day in and day out versus being focused on policies and then trying to peer out to what's going to happen in the next 10 years, right? Um, being able to understand what you're investing in your systems currently now for later, and then saying no to things that feel good but don't build, right? So it's almost like it might taste good right now, but is that going to add on an additional 5 or 10 pounds later? It's the same thing with your business, and you take the same approach.
Oh, that's good advice. You know, thought that I want to put out here and bring to a question is if you're trying to scale, but you don't have a long-term vision in place, what is the eventual outcome of that going to be? There's got to be a negative consequence to that. What
Yeah,
what what has been your experience when somebody tries to scale, but there's just no clarity as to what the end game is going to be?
yeah. So when I was thinking about this question, I wrote down three things. One is the mistakes that they make in scaling without a vision is they chase the volume over value, right? They also grow a team, but not a culture. And then they also increase revenue, but they decrease fulfillment, right? So it's almost like when I was writing that, I was thinking about like Netflix, right? How they raised their price, but they didn't increase the value or try to realign their brand. And that's not a legacy. It actually becomes a liability.
Mm.
And they feel it every single day when they show up. So
Yeah, that's powerful, um, thought there that you actually create a liability.
yeah.
And so I appreciate you bringing that out. I think Netflix is a great example. Uh,
Mhm.
so when we talk about, leadership, one of the things that a leader has to think about is succession. Who can lead in your place? And so, how can agency owners begin developing those future leaders within their team, even if they're a small agency?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is to start small, and to identify someone within the organization who takes initiative, that communicates clearly, and wants to take on more responsibility. And then you learn to mentor them intentionally, right? Um, you don't wait for them to be ready, but you build them up with coaching, training, and clarity. And so one of the things that I always say is it's the drip effect, right? Just like you drip on your clients, you're going to drip on your team. And those who want to drink the water, they will show up to the well. And so those are the people that you focus on growing and building. Um, yeah.
And then, are there any particular qualities that you look for to identify team members who could potentially step into leadership or maybe even ownership roles at some point?
Yeah. So you focus on their emotional capacity. I shared before about their emotional intelligence, emotional maturity. One of the things that I asked the team that I was working with today was um, what do they feel affects their them being led, right? And it was really emotional maturity, um, them lacking emotional and maturity because they were placed in that position because they're connected to a family or sorry, they're connected to a family or a um, Um, so the um, yeah, so ownership as well, curiosity. And then the best features are learners with strong people skills, not just top performers, right? That's huge when it comes to sustainability because you can find those top performers, eventually they burn out. But when it's a skill, they usually sustain and stay and they continue to add on to the culture as you're expanding. And they're usually adaptable versus a top producer. Sometimes they're just a top producer in a certain environment in a certain climate, and then when the climate changes, then it affects their productivity.
It's a good observation. Yeah, not always a top performer in every environment. So I think that's powerful. What are some of the operational and financial structures that need to be in place if an agency is going to thrive beyond the founder's involvement?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is having documented SOPs. Um, Having documented SOPs, and when I was thinking of that, I was thinking of updated document SOPs, because a lot of my agents, like I said before, they take their book of business from another agent who's retired, and they take leadership from those who've been in the game for 20 plus years, and they're trying to follow suit, but it's a completely different ballgame today. Another thing is delegated decision making, right? Um, you need to be able to understand, hey, every time you have a question, the CEO is not always the only person that can answer it, right? Are you empowering other people to be able to answer it within the office? And then a succession plan, also known as AKA the exit plan. So, like, what is your plan? I mean, I know just like you're training your clients to be able to retire, you want to make sure that you're also putting yourself in position to retire. And then lastly, clear financials and profit margins, right? What is making profit? What is not? What is a liability? What is an asset?
Very good. And when we're talking about this exit strategy, should the agency owner be thinking about building to sell, or should they be thinking about building for generational continuity? And then how do you help them make that decision?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing is it depends on their why, right? Um, why are they building this business? Some of my clients, they want generational wealth. 90% of them want freedom initially, right? So they initially start building for freedom because, like I said, most of the agents that I work with, they were executives in roles like enterprise or Hertz, and when they had their big layoffs, or it's another big one, HP, right? Most That's where most of my agents, came from. It wasn't like they went to school for this. So we explore both routes. And through our legacy architecture framework, we help owners decide based on their vision, not just industry trends. So understanding where do they want to go.
Mm, that's perfect. Yeah, know where you want to go. Be clear on your outcomes.
Hmm.
We've talked a lot about culture through these interviews, and one of the questions I have for you is, how do you create a culture that doesn't rely on your daily presence to function correctly?
This is good. So one of the things, oh God, I was just adding to my little playbook. So we actually codify it. So we help our clients create culture playbooks. As a matter of fact, we have our own playbook that we embed within the culture. We already have it created, and I was just adding some things to it as well, especially when it comes to emotional intelligence. So coding it to understand. So we have different ways that we code on how people communicate, for instance, right? How they make decisions and what depends on them. And it's a color, right? So each one's put in a specific color. So we can codify it by giving them, different badges with that color. And so someone knows, okay, well, if this person, they need all the details before they move forward, let me make sure that I'm a little bit more detailed with my instructions before I hand this off, right? Whereas when you have another one who has another a color, you could just give them the bare minimum and they're running with it and they don't even need much, right? So understanding what they need to execute on the vision. And then you also want to make sure the team understand the values, the behaviorals, the rituals, and team agreements as a whole. And also, when the culture is written down and lived out loud, it doesn't depend on you to be there.
Mm,
It runs by itself.
that's powerful. It's powerful.
Mhm.
And I think you'd agree with this. You have to set that expectation into the culture, because however you program your culture and set the expectations, you're going to be, um, you can make a trap for yourself or you can create freedom for yourself based on
Mhm.
those expectations. So powerful stuff again. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah.
What are some rituals, values, systems that agencies should institutionalize to maintain proper alignment long term?
So ask me that question again. You said where they can do the alignment long term.
Yeah, to where they can maintain their alignment long term. So as they're creating this self-sustaining culture. They are putting the things in place so it's not all reliant upon the agency owner to always be there
Right.
to
Okay.
make
So
things happen.
elaborating on that. Okay.
Yeah. What do they need to put in place to make sure they stay congruent to that over the long term?
Yeah. So one of the things is, do you want me to explain, I guess, like a story or something? Like,
Sure. Yeah, that'd probably
okay,
help. Yeah, give great case
got
studies
it.
always help.
Okay. So one of our clients, she had a three location agency. She's brilliant. I shouldn't say was, but she is brilliant. And she was just burnt out. So we helped her install what's called leadership layers to promote from within, and then also clarified her core values across all locations. Most of my agents, they are so buried in their day to day that they're not able to uh, clarify or create these clear core values within the agency. So they have us come in. Um, but what we found was once we did install it, right? Once we did start putting in these different layers, like I said, codify it, right? And creating the culture playbook, not only did the retention improve, but her team now sees themselves as the steward of the brand. So they understand how they play a role in the long term and the legacy of the company. And so they see themselves within that.
Oh, that's fantastic. And, what a great case study. Somebody that had obviously built, some success, but was on the verge of probably, just cratering under the strain of some of that without some course correction.
Yeah.
So, how does the shift from agent to architect impact the way clients and team members view the agency?
Mm. So it really when you lead with the vision, right, the people rise to meet it, right? And not only that, but clients begin to trust you more because they see it continuously, right? Whenever you think about a bad experience, right? For instance, I just, right after my training, I went to um a restaurant, and the experience today was, I'm actually I drive about 2 hours to even come to this particular restaurant because I really, really love it. But the experience wasn't the same, right? And so it trickles down to your clients. And then they start, gaining more trust because they see the vision. Team members also, they end up staying longer, right? So they stay around, and they're able to buy into it, right? Um, and you move from being in the business to actually building one. One of the things that we talked about in my workshop today was there was an agent who had went from one employer to this new company, and they had been with that company for about 8 years. And they genuinely said they were planning to retire there, but because of the lack of culture is what caused them to move to this company, And I get it all the time where there's agents that inbox me on Facebook and Messenger and LinkedIn, and they're like, hey, can you share with me some of the offices that you're working with? Because they want to be in rooms where the agents are investing in their team. So, are you creating a culture for them to grow? And so that basically shifts the agent um, to the architect.
Excellent.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about, putting systems in place, SOPs in place, things of that nature. But I think you and I would probably both agree that probably the biggest thing that has to happen is there has to be a mental shift.
Hmm.
And so when we talk about this mindset shift that has to take place for the agency owner to move from operator to visionary architect, what is that mindset shift that has to take place?
Yeah, from operator to architect. So the biggest thing is you are not the business, you are its builder. You are not the business, you are its builder. And the sooner you shift from doing it all to designing it well, the more you'll build something that is lasting and sustainable.
That's good. And then as we kind of wrap up here, for those listening who do want to build something that lasts beyond themselves, what's the first step they should be taking today?
Yeah, so the first step should be to write down your 10-year vision. Figure out where you want to be in 10 years. How do you want to be living? And then you're going to reverse engineer the systems and team that will support that vision. That's your blueprint.
Fantastic. And Nikki, for those that want to connect with you and learn more about Package to Profit, learn more about working with you, where can they do that?
Yeah, so you can go to our websites, packagetoprofit.com, and then it's /info. And you'll be able to sign up for our next info session. You'll be able to bring questions to the info sessions. And then we also have Scale Talks live weekly, which are on Sundays. But if you're not able to catch us live on Sundays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, then you can always catch the replays by going to our website as well, packagetoprofit.com, and you'll see live sessions.
Excellent. And Nikki, it's been great doing these 6 episodes with you. And to our listeners, be sure and go back, catch each of these episodes. It's a mini course in itself. The fact that you haven't had to pay for it, it's for free.
Mhm.
You have gotten a ton of value. Take your notepad, your pen, you're going to get a lot of wisdom out of that. And then be sure and connect with Nikki. Nikki, again, thank you for spending all this time with us here on the Digital Insurance Agent Podcast.
And thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. And to our listeners, we look forward to having you again with us on the next episode.
All right. Thank you so much.